Hey everyone, I hope that this finds you. I don't even know what day of the week it is. Oh, it's Wednesday. And I know it's actually the day before National CBD Day, so I got that part. But welcome. If you are catching me live, my name is Ashley Koff. I'm a registered dietitian. If you are catching me at a better time for you, awesome. Just know that either way, I will answer your questions. So please let me know where you're joining me from, what questions you have about CBD. While we're chatting for a second, I promised that I would share... let's see, I'm going to promise to share this. So while we're popping in, I want to make sure that as we start to talk about CBD, that I am answering all of the questions that you have, but I might also not be the better expert. So one of the things I asked was my friend Brooke Alpert, who is a holistic cannabis expert. She is an editor of a cannabis magazine. She's got a product. I love it, Daily Habit. She is also going to pop in here and be able to answer some questions either live, if we can make that happen, or off to the side or at a better time for her. So we're going to make all of this work. I just wanted to hit share so that I can get this in. I think that'll work. I might not be able to share it right now, and that's okay. So when it comes to CBD, I'd love to know right off the bat if you have any questions, because my main goal tonight is to answer any questions that you have about CBD. My second goal is to make sure that you actually are asking the right questions, whether you are a healthcare practitioner or whether you are a patient considering, or whether you are a healthcare practitioner who's considering recommending it or taking it for yourself. So when it comes to CBD, I would like to know, what questions do you have? And then I'm going to get about sharing the questions that I have. Hi, Marty. So awesome to see you. Thanks for popping on in. Oh, there we go. I wanted to try sharing this to our page, but you know what? It is just not working on my phone. So we're going to share it. I think we're going to share it after one of those. I thought after Mercury was done being retrograde, everything was supposed to be easy, but we'll just deal with that later. Okay, so what I want you to do is tell me any questions that you have about CBD. So many claims. Marty, thank you for bringing that one up. So we're going to talk about all the claims under the planet, which is usually the biggest radar for like, hey, this is a big mistake, but I've got something interesting to tell you about CBD. So what questions, and then also tell me where you're joining. Marty's joining us from Austin, so thank you. Any questions that you have about CBD, I want to jump in with those right away. So that I can make sure that I am going to, does it have relaxation effects? Awesome. Keep the questions coming. And yay, we've got Brooke in here. Okay, so she's at least in the question area. I was like trying to figure out if I could bring her in live, and I'm using eCam and I can't figure it out. So thank you so much for joining us. So Brooke is here to back me up because I'm not a CBD expert. What I am is a healthcare practitioner who's super, super concerned about confusion. So I've been working with hemp foods and talking to the US and the Canadian population about hemp foods for over 10 years. And now you see hemp oil, which could be CBD oil. But I was telling you, hey, if you're pregnant or if you're dealing with these other things, I want you to eat hemp oil. And all of a sudden I'm like, wait, hemp seed oil in the food section. What about CBD? And now CBD is also being used in food. So we've got, a Wild West out here. So we're going to talk a little bit about hemp. We're going to talk about CBD. Marty's got another question. Can you overdo it on dosing? As with anything, absolutely, Marty, anything can be overdone. But there are some specific factors that we want to dive into. So Brooke will correct me if I make an egregious statement, but also she may add in her 2 cents here. And as I mentioned, she is the editor of a magazine, and also, and Brooke, if we have the link for your magazine, we can have people jump in and get that one, because I love it. It's beautiful and it has great articles in it. But also, I happen to take, among other CBD products, but I happen to take and recommend Daily Habit CBD because I trust Brooke, and that was really what was a deciding factor. So noted. So one of the things that Brooke was saying, it's so hard to overdose on CBD. So that's a great point. One of the things we are going to talk about, however, though, is that if you take other medications, you may actually have an issue. You may not have an overdose of CBD, but you may have an issue with the actual outcomes of the CBD and the competition with that medication. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something we have to be informed about. So I say that because you could have, you might not have an overdose of the particular CBD, of its CBD, but you could have what one might describe as overdose effects, and it might not actually have to do with the CBD. And why is that? And Brooke made a great point. No need to take more than you need. And also it's expensive. Good stuff is expensive, so no need to take more than you need. But there's good evidence that higher amounts is still safe. So let's come back to why is CBD helpful for us? You know, Marty was asking about saying that you hear so many claims. One of the reasons that you hear so many claims, Marty, is because our bodies have, and we've just sort of discovered it, like a digestive system, like a heart system, you know, all of these other systems that we have in the body, a detoxification system, we have an endocannabinoid system. And the beauty of having an endocannabinoid system, it's like for anyone who has a spine, is that it is going to have these receptor sites. And those receptors are going to be ones that when they receive what they're looking for, whether directly or indirectly, can cause other and help support other positive outcomes in the body. So the reason that you literally hear head to toe, outside of the body, inside of the body, you hear all of these claims is because we've got this whole system. It's called the ECS, as with Dancing Girls, you know, from Brooke on that part. So the fact that we have this endocannabinoid system means that there's so many different ways that CBD can impact the body. So, you know, one of my favorite, and I think, Brooke, you were one when we did our interview, which, oh, by the way, is over on YouTube. So I want to make sure you guys check that one out for more practitioner information on specifically choosing dosage and quality and all that. We'll get into that if those are your questions as well tonight. But one of the things that I learned in there is just how good CBD can be for taking the edge off, like helping us with anxiety, helping us with, you know, sort of that high level that we're at right now where if we take the edge off, we may make better choices. And I remember, I'm going to keep talking about Brooke because she's here, but I remember having a funny conversation with her when we were starting on this. And I was like, look, I'm happy to try your product, but like, you know, I don't have any problems. I don't have anything that I'm trying to deal with. So, you know, I don't think that like I necessarily am going to notice something. You know, it's kind of like I'm not going to take a supplement for thyroid because I don't have low thyroid. So what would I do on that part? And she's like, you know what, Ashley? I think you could benefit, like, or not, you didn't even say I think you could benefit. You're like, hey, go ahead and try it. It was like her story. Her husband needed it. And then she started to try it. And one of the things that I've been finding, I think I even texted, I said, you know what? To me, it's like the difference of when I feel like I might need to grab for a cocktail, or I might grab for chocolate, or I might grab a person and want to wring them around the neck, and I don't do that. But I might have those instincts at different times. And what CBD has been very helpful for me, I've noticed, is that it does help take that edge off. And so it's a healthier way of doing that because I now know that I'm nourishing that endocannabinoid system. Now, the difference with, and as I said, Brooke and I have a whole video about, interview about all the different ways that, different forms of CBD and how to choose. And we also have our CBD guide, which I shared in the introduction here, which has her advice and some other expert advice in there, to help you make better choices. But I want you to understand one fundamental difference. There is, better than a glass of wine or manslaughter. Exactly, right? You know, one of the key differences is there is the entire hemp plant, right? This cannabis plant. And from a hemp standpoint, what I always learned about, because remember, I was looking for hemp food, so I was always concerned that we sourced the plant that didn't have THC, because I wanted to be able to recommend to people that there were hemp foods. So I always knew that they were like cousins. They are cousins. And one of them was being bred to have high amounts of THC so that they could be what we would call the drug or the THC plant. And then there were foods. And by law, those foods couldn't have very much or really any THC. It's less than 0.3 for the entire plant. And Brooke, correct me if I'm wrong on that part. I think that's still where the legislation is. I know sometimes at the state level, things are changing. But that means that you're not going to get high. So how are you feeling good? But you're not going to get high on that part, right? Because what happens actually, unlike THC, which directly impacts that endocannabinoid system and those receptor sites, CBD actually works indirectly. And that's really important as we start to get into some interactions that could potentially occur with CBD and understanding, again, why they're not bad. We just have to have healthcare practitioners know about them. I'm going to pause for a moment. Marty's saying she's bringing her mom with mild dementia to Austin to live. Maybe it could help her with the flight anxiety. Elderly may not react the same. Marty, great point on that part. Stick with me through this because I want to go through the medication piece because you never want to start something, especially for somebody who's elderly or like, if you're going and running a race, you don't want to put on new shoes. You don't want to do something just for that flight. So if we had a time period where she could try something, but also we need to go through the medication list, which I'm going to get to in a moment, just to make sure. And you might even want to have a conversation with her practitioners, but I love the idea of it. So we'll get there for you. And yes, there is no appreciable amount of THC in the hemp-derived CBD. Now, the other distinction in hemp-derived CBD as opposed to THC plant CBD, because there are times when you'll get the THC with the CBD in there, that could be beneficial. But in the CBD from a hemp side of things, what you want to understand is there's something called full spectrum. And basically that means that you're getting all the benefits of the plant because CBD is just one of the cannabinoids, just one of them. So the analogy that I like to offer is it's like probiotics. Probiotics are so good, the good bacteria is great for our digestive system. But if you only take in a lactobacilli and you don't get in a bifidobacteria, and if you have no idea what I'm talking about, grab our probiotic guide. But if you don't get in the different strains and you don't know that they all work better together, then you may not have those better outcomes. And so with CBD, there may be a benefit or a reason to just isolate CBD, maybe if you're a fitness person, because you just, for all clarity and, or safety, or even somebody who's in our military, we might need to isolate that CBD so we know there's absolutely zero THC. 0.3% in the entire plant is going to bring you pretty close to zero. We're already rounding down to zero. But for anyone with drug testing or any of those pieces, you could have the need for the CBD isolate. It just doesn't work the same as getting in the terpenes and the other cannabinoids and that full, the aerial parts of the plant, right? And the flowers. So I hope that I said that correctly. I love the way on Daily Habit on Brooke's product, she actually spells that part out. And she was telling me too about how important transparency is, knowing what you're getting in that product, because as a plant, one of the reasons I fell in love with the hemp plant when I was learning about it from a hemp food standpoint is it's regenerative. It is so powerful in cleaning up and helping to clean up the toxins and all of these other things in our soil. But you want to make sure that what you're getting is clean, that it doesn't have that stuff in it, right? And that's where transparency and the sourcing of your CBD is going to be really important. You want to make sure that whoever's product you're taking shares that information boldly. They should brag about it, but they should also have third party, and you probably want to review that information. And you guys, if you're just joining, first of all, thank you so much for joining. We're talking about CBD. Please share any questions. No question is a dumb question, and I promise you other people have the questions that you have, so go ahead and ask those questions. And you'll also see my friend Be Nutritious by Brooke Alpert popping in here. She's one of my go-to cannabis experts. She's featured throughout our materials, helped me develop the Better Nutrition Expert Guide to CBD, which you can get. And that is, I highly recommend that guide if you're considering the product, taking any form of CBD to share with your practitioner and to learn about it in terms of quality and dosage. We're only touching the top of that here tonight. And she's answering some questions too. So we're sort of tag teaming. So she may pop in. So for example, Marty, she was sharing some information. Hi, Deborah. She was sharing some information just about great for the elderly with dementia, but we do have to check with the doctor, and we're going to get into that. One of the areas we're going to get into tonight is, in addition to answering your questions, is also what questions we healthcare practitioners want to be asking. We want you to ask us, and also what questions do we need to ask you to make sure that we're doing well on this prescribing and having you consume CBD. I want everybody to stop for a second and realize this. Hello, Lisa. You just went and said CBD sold here at the video store. Yeah, you're going to go get an oil tune-up with your car, and there's going to be CBD sold there. There's going to be CBD upgrades in your coffee. That's an option. There's CBD in beverages. There's CBD in products that have like 5 to 7 teaspoons of sugar. So even if the CBD is wonderful for you, all that sugar at one time is not better for you. We're also going to see CBD in products with artificial sweeteners. We are just going to see CBD junkification. And if we are not careful, not only can we downgrade the health benefits of CBD, because just because there's CBD in there, if there's a bunch of other junky stuff, it's like trying to clean your floor with dirty shoes. Like, you're not going to get where you need to go, right? Not going to get that clean floor. So we have to be really careful about our choices there. But also, what we're going to get to in a couple of minutes is if we're taking any medications. And you guys, I'm talking about Advil and Motrin. We have to understand, and also for getting things done, like maybe going in for laser eye surgery, or maybe obviously I haven't had it done. If we're going in for dental work, or things like this, we have to know, because there are things that could be going on with blood thinning and some of the other stuff. So I'm going to get into that in a moment. Just a reminder that I also have Brooke from Be Nutritious, who is a cannabis expert. She also has the product Daily Habit CBD, which I love. I recommend. I've got family members and friends on, including myself. And I have my dog on a different CBD, though. He's on, I think it's Bluebird, is his CBD. But it is like the gold rush. And anytime there is a gold rush, Lisa, we have to be really careful, because we want the gold, but minus all the issues with the rush, right? Like, we want to make sure that we're getting in that better stuff. So what I want to talk about with CBD is just understanding that things that you want to look for. This is a place where organic really is very helpful for you. And you may say, that organic, one is too expensive, or you might hear a company say, yeah, but we wanted everybody to be able to drink our beverage, and, organic isn't affordable for everyone. Then fine. They should not be drinking your CBD beverage. What they should be doing is having whatever beverage they want, and then this is what I do, having organic CBD, because at the end of the day, we need to know that our CBD is clean. So we want it to provide all these benefits of this amazing plants, but plants are growing in not so healthy soil and not so healthy air these days. And we don't want them to aggregate things that are not better for us, especially if we're taking it in a supplement form, and especially if we're taking it to feel better. So we kicked off the hour talking about how CBD can be very helpful for anxiety. CBD, one of my favorite things, and I actually wrote an article for a Gutsy Girl, which is one of my favorite blogs, if you haven't gone over there, for her on CBD for digestion, because her whole work focuses on healthy digestion, and she had all these questions about CBD for digestion. So please head on over there if you're interested in the CBD for digestion. But CBD is so impactful for digestion because, remember, our endocannabinoid system, we have an endocannabinoid system. It's going all throughout our body. And guess what else is going all throughout our body? Our digestive system. And the ability for CBD to indirectly support the receptor sites, especially around things like serotonin, which so much of the serotonin receptor sites are in our digestive tract. When all of that is better, not only is that better for our mood, we think about serotonin, we think about our mood, but it is actually better for the functioning of our digestive tract. So that's the win that we're looking for there. And that's why CBD has so many benefits on that part. And Brooke said, must be organically grown. Hemp sucks up all the toxins from a plant. Great for Hiroshima, but not for you. And that is exactly, I couldn't have said it better. So what we want to remember on that part is when we're choosing CBD, any CBD is not better for you. We want to look at the quality, the things we were talking about. For most of us, we're looking for hemp derived, unless you're working with a practitioner or making a decision to have THC, and then you would be using THC derived. Full spectrum or broad spectrum, meaning that it's getting in all of those different cannabinoids, which is a really big word, but that's where the CBD part comes in. But we've got CBA, CBG, we've got all these different CBs in there. Plus we have terpenes. So think of those like antioxidants. So what we want really is we want the whole tomato. We don't just want lycopene, right? Or we don't just want the fiber from the apple. We want all the different benefits that are in there. So we really want to get the whole, the full spectrum or the broad spectrum, which is going to be helpful. Organic is also going to matter a lot on that part. Okay, I actually brought along notes because I spent the last couple of days reading through the science. Again, I am not a CBD. I'm not a licensed holistic cannabis. I haven't sat for the certification. My friend Brooke has. That's why she's on here, and also who I turn to for all this information. But here are the things that I, as a practitioner, I know that I need to know this about my patient, and I want to have a conversation. The most important thing you want to think about with CBD is that you want to get the benefits, but you also want your practitioner to know that you're consuming it, because when you get those benefits, One of the benefits may be you come off of some medications, or you don't need as much of a medication, right? Or it might be that when you add the CBD at a different time, a time further away from a medication to avoid that competition, that there's added benefit from a whole standpoint, pain reduction, anxiety reduction, etc., and there's no interference with medication. But I've got one word for you: grapefruit. Okay, so if anybody has ever heard of anyone who is supposed to avoid grapefruit or avoid grapefruit juice because of a medication that they take, they're on to the CBD component here. What we need to understand is, because we have an endocannabinoid system, CBD is not some new ingredient. It is actually a nutrient that is going to come into the body from a plant nutrient, right? That's going to come into the body, and it competes. And it competes pretty darn effectively. It's like coming in there and it's like, move over medication, I'm going to take that spot. I'm going to lock onto that receptor site, right? And when it locks onto that receptor site, two things could happen. One thing that could happen is your medication doesn't get in there. So you could see a decreased impact of your medication. And remember, this is like if they're duking it out right at the same time. One option might be spacing out your CBD and your medication. Another option might be looking at, especially if you're taking medications at a certain time period, then bringing CBD at another time period, in terms of different months, or, depending on what the treatment protocol is. But so what we want to understand is that your CBD is going to come in and compete. So it could make your medication less effective. Here's another issue that could arise. CBD can come in and compete, which means that your medication doesn't get broken down and used as much, so it hangs out. So that means you could have lasting impact, a longer acting component. Now, strategically, that's something that an informed practitioner can use and may even be beneficial, but they've got to know what's going on. And if you are a practitioner, you've got to know what's going on. So one option for you is to get the Better Nutrition Expert Guide to CBD. Another option for you is to email me, because I have all of this in notes if you want some of the interaction information, and I'll be updating the CBD guide. So we've got that coming along with some of this additional information. But I wanted to make sure, sometimes we hear about P450 and people then Google cytochrome P450. And if you're like, what is she even talking about? I'm in like geeky biochemistry, organic chemistry, physiology land, and I love it. So basically in our liver, what we want to understand is that most medications are processed throughout our liver. But in our liver, as well as in other places, so it could be in our skin, it could be in other organs, there is actually activity that's going on to metabolize, to encourage the metabolizing of these medications, right? And so I wanted you to understand that CBD can compete so effectively that it could inhibit the activity of cytochrome P450. Now, why is that important? Because over 60%, 60% of marketed medications have that interaction potential. So, whoa, my goodness, right? So the first thing you could do is you could just go through a checklist of all of those medications. That may be helpful, but the more important thing, and this is Better Nutrition entry level. You as the patient are responsible for going into your practitioner and having them know everything that's going in and on your body most often. So my recommendation is you can use our checkup list if you like to use that, or you can create your own list, your own file. But if you're adding a protein powder, if you're taking a supplement, if you're drinking a beverage that has something added to it, if you are taking medications, if you grab ibuprofen because you just worked out a little bit too hard and you're like, oh, I need that Advil or Motrin, or maybe you only take Advil and Motrin during your period, you have to let your practitioner know about that stuff. Now, additionally, you as a practitioner, it is on you to make sure you know about that stuff. And that's where this CBD dance comes in, because when the liver breaks down drugs and toxins, as I was talking about, to allow them to work in the body, we want them to work as intended especially because your practitioner is figuring out a dose specific to you, or hopefully is figuring out a dose specific to you, right? Now, this could bleed over, pun intended, we'll get into that in a second. It could bleed over into also information on supplements. So some supplements, like maybe you're taking GABA or some of these other supplements to deal with neurotransmitters, or, maybe some supplements like fish oil and CoQ10, which may actually have blood thinning components. We're going to have to focus on those because those in conjunction with other blood thinners is important to know, and you would need to add CBD to that as well. So I'm going to start to go through it. I apologize for looking down. You get to see the top of my head on that part. But I want to make sure that we are paying attention to all the P450 medications and just understanding, remember, this doesn't mean that you cannot consume CBD. In fact, CBD may be part of helping you reduce these medications or have a more effective outcome from a combination of medications, but information needs to be shared. So, and I want to say one other thing. CBD, the power of CBD is so unbelievably personalized. So just like our digestive tracts are completely personal to us, there's no such thing as like, this is what a standard digestive tract does. It's our fingerprint. It's super personal to us. So our endocannabinoid system is also really personal to us. Medications, what impacts medications and what the way that CBD is acting may be different depending on genetics, your gender, your age, your life stage. So one of the things you cannot do is take the CBD that somebody else takes just because it seems like a good idea. You both have brown curly hair. You have to go through this information personally. Lisa, thank you so much. And shout out to my friend Brooke on that part. She said, you've been 1,000 times more helpful than any doc I've been to with interaction research. I feel like they don't have as strong of a background in pharmacology. I don't even have a strong background in pharmacology. What I have a strong background in is helping my patients get better results by assessing everything that's going in and on their body. So my whole thing is, a lot of doctors, a lot of dietitians, a lot of practitioners out there do not know this information. First of all, you can share this video with them. Second of all, you can share our expert CBD guide. That's why I spent hours interviewing these different practitioners and putting it together. And that's why I'm going to share this information with you today. And if any practitioner has any questions, reach out to me. Again, I'm not the CBD expert. In fact, I think I'm better at this because since I'm not the expert, I'm super nervous about the recommendation. So I wanted to make sure I was going to get it right for everyone. But thank you so much, Lisa. It means a lot. It makes all those hours worth it. Okay. So some of the things that we have to think about, if you're taking a medication, you go and you get that medication, and either, you're doing it online or you're going into the old pharmacy and you're getting it, and the information says avoid grapefruit, or there's a grapefruit warning on there. That is a really great trigger for you to say, before I sip, apply, drop in, do anything with CBD, I have to have a quick conversation with my doctor. It may be as simple as spacing those out, right? We may do very well. So for example, I space statin drugs and CoQ10 all the time. I do the CoQ10 in the morning and the statin drug in the evening. And I think that's really important. And Lisa said she's considering trying a CBD lotion for an autoimmune condition. Are there different considerations for lotion versus oil? There are. We actually talk about it in the guide. And then I also just want to, again, shout out to my expert in residence here tonight, Brooke Alpert, who is also somebody, Lisa, that you could connect with. And Brooke said something great, which is some people will tell you just not to take the CBD because they don't know the interactions, but it's only beneficial for the patient and the doctor to thoroughly research. Exactly. So here's the issue. I don't want to tell you not to take CBD. I'm about to go through a really scary list of how many different medications CBD can interact with. And I'm doing that because I think everyone can win with CBD. Better quality CBD, I think, has so much promise. And I want to see it in places. I want like my NBA players to be able to use it. And I want, kids to be all of these different things. But if we start having perceived interactions, or if we start just listing, if you're on any of these medications and telling people not to do it, or if you don't tell your doctor that your coffee that was just coffee and almond milk is now coffee, almond milk, and CBD, which, oh, by the way, is amazing, or I love to do more of like my bulletproof version in the morning is 2 shots of espresso with Daily Habit. and I'm good to go for several hours. So I really like that, especially if you're doing like an intermittent fasting, great on that part. But we have to understand the interaction so that we can really make a difference on that front. Okay, so I'm going through the medications. Stick with me, everybody. I'm going to go through this one and not answer any questions or go off track myself until I've gone through all of them so that I make sure I get to it. All right, so things to keep in mind. Remember, I mentioned if you've received a grapefruit warning, or there's a grapefruit warning for someone you're working with or a medication. There is a class of drugs called macrolides, and these are one class of antibiotics. Thank you, Lisa. One class of antibiotics, and things like I think they're all the mycins. I know them because as a kid I was popped antibiotics so much it's what ruined my digestive system. However, okay, clarithromycin, azithromycin, it's also called Zithromax, fidaxomicin, erythromycin. And so one of the things to think about is you're not always on an antibiotic, I hope. There might be times where you have to be on these. But if you're taking this might be a time where you just don't want to take your CBD, or you really want to have a conversation with your doctor to make sure that you're not reducing the effectiveness of that, because that is really dangerous. And also it could just mean that they put you on 2 doses of, a second dose of antibiotics or a third dose of antibiotics. And this whole time you were taking the CBD. Remember, it's just about competition. And usually the CBD wins because your body wants it. It gets it. It knows what it needs to do. All right. Another set are your beta blockers and your calcium blockers. So I'm giving out the names of the prescription names. They could also be generics, but I don't think any of us know the actual medication names, or I certainly don't. But these are things for high blood pressure, chest pain, but also interestingly for Raynaud's, right? So Norvasc, Cardizem, Procardia, Lopressor, Levitol. There's also a class of drugs, benzodiazepines, which are used in places, think about like seizures or anxiety, panic, insomnia, where the body is in this hyper alert state, and it's not able to break out of that. And so those are things like Xanax, Klonopin, Restoril, Valium. But remember, there also may be things that are used like GABA or 5-HTP or some of these others. Now, what's interesting is, remember, we started off with a conversation about how CBD could help with anxiety. So what we want to understand is maybe there's an opportunity with a qualified practitioner to look at how adding CBD, again, could reduce the need for some of that medication. But I don't want your seizure medication, also almost said Caesar salad, your seizure medication or your anxiety medication or your insomnia medication to not work as effectively, and for you to go back to your doctor or call your doctor and say it's not working, and for them to just increase the dosage. That is where we would have something that was your fault and the doctor's fault. We've got to ask the question, or the dietitian's fault or the nurse's fault. Are you consuming CBD? That would help us on that part. Immunosuppressants. So I think if you're on an immunosuppressant, you probably know the names of those. Some statins. So this is interesting. Some statins, a huge percentage of the population are on statins, will have that interaction, and others won't. So Lipitor and Zocor will have that interaction potential. Pravachol and Crestor won't have. Now, another piece of this, remember, is these interactions are stated based on the way that they work chemically in the body, the way that they're metabolized, and CBD's ability to potentially compete. But I say potentially because it also depends on the dosage of your CBD. It depends on your genetics. It depends on a lot of different factors. So one of the other ones, guys and ladies with guys, Viagra or generic Viagra. So remember, one of the things, I'm just going to play out a scenario here. One of the great things about CBD is that it may be helpful for reducing, dealing with anxiety and helping you feel better and getting in the mood. So we might really like that. But if you're on an ED medication and you have CBD at the same time, it could compete. And one of the ways that it could compete is actually leaving that medication unmetabolized so that it stays in your bloodstream, so that it stays longer. That may not be desirable. So we want to pay attention on that one. Something as simple as antihistamines. So if you're taking Zyrtec, Allegra, Benadryl. So Benadryl makes me bounce all over the radar on that part. And so I want to make sure that, for me, it may actually be great to take CBD with Benadryl. But what you want to understand, again, is if you're taking these things with your Zyrtec and Allegra, I actually would love for you to check out our information on some of the homeopathic remedies and other things that might help from an allergy standpoint and have less impact on digestion, and maybe you don't need some of these other things. But if you're taking those, we want them to be effective. Maybe that means your CBD at a different time. And Brooke is calling it a night, but she will be around it can pop back in and answer any questions, or feel free to tag her or to just reach out to her. So Daily Habit CBD, Be Nutritious by Brooke Alpert, and you connect with her there. Chanda, we are just getting into thyroid meds. Like, you came in literally at the right time, Chanda. So I'm getting right there. We were just talking about antihistamines. I had mentioned immunosuppressants. I also want to talk about antiretrovirals. So anyone with HIV who's on HIV medications. And guys and gals, if you're on medications for if you're taking some of these medications, and we're going to get into thyroid, there are some specific recommendations about, when you can eat. If you're on Parkinson's medications, what you could eat along with those ingredients, along with those medications. You can't violate any of that with CBD. And that's really important. So for example, with thyroid medication, we can talk about if you're on thyroid medication and you're told that you're not supposed to eat for 2 hours, you should not be consuming CBD in that time period. I want you to hear me loud and clear, because skincare now has CBD, right? I won't be surprised if pretty soon toothpaste and deodorant has CBD. So we really are going to have to pay attention. And it's not because there isn't actually any proven link with a lot of with the whole class of drugs around the thyroid medications, but there's information about how they compete with all these other things. And so we really need to make sure that we've got to be super clear on making sure that we're not, what's the word I'm looking for? That we're not violating the other principles of our medication. Lisa, I am happy to help you on that part. Do me a favor, send me an email, ashley@thebetternutritionprogram.com, and I can send it to you. For anyone who's a practitioner, a healthcare practitioner, who's on FullScript. I actually have a whole protocol for allergies that's listed on there. Rerun, you need to not do that. He's scratching up the carpet. I think he's frustrated with the amount of time I'm spending on CBD. Okay, another class that's going to be really important, and this one, keep in mind, I'm talking to everyone where a lot of us are adults here and we're having conversations. You guys, kids, there are going to be products. It's going to be so easy for kids to access CBD. And if kids are on medications, especially because 1, they have growing bodies, number 2, their hormones tend to be running all crazy, and we're just trying to figure them out or leave them and say, we'll figure you out later. But we want to make sure that their medications are working effectively, and that we're also judging the effectiveness of that medication. I bring that up because I was just about to talk about SSRIs. So remember before, I was talking about serotonin and CBD's ability to assist with serotonin. It's why it's helpful with addressing anxiety, supporting mood. But some of those SSRIs, there is that potential for there to be competition. Zoloft, Prozac, Paxil, Lexapro, Celexa. So if you're on these medications, it does not mean that you can't have CBD. Doesn't mean you can't have CBD in your skincare, as a supplement, in, whatever products you're going to try. If it's that better quality CBD that we were talking about, it means that before you take any of it, you have to talk to your healthcare practitioner. And I promise, I will make this promise to everyone who is listening here. If you have difficulty talking to your healthcare practitioner about CBD and this conversation, give them my email, ashley@thebetternutritionprogram.com. You can certainly share this video. They may not want to watch or have the time to watch all of it, but I am happy to have a direct conversation with them about how they can assess and have that conversation, or direct them to some clinical research, which they may feel more comfortable making some decisions. The other thing is, I highly, highly recommend, and you guys, just $10. So I think it's a really smart thing if you're going to spend any money in the future on CBD. Please consider getting our Better Nutrition Expert Guide to CBD, because this information and then some is included in there. And you will then have that information. You can also share that information with your practitioner, because if they haven't learned a lot about CBD, or if they're learning from, just one clinical side and don't necessarily know about the food and the supplement side, and you share the guide, you guys can have an effective conversation together. Shonda, thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right, still going through those medications. Antipsychotics and opioids, you guys, this is really important. There's such great opportunity. Can we use cannabis to undo the damage that is ravaging our society right now with the opioid crisis. I'm in Ohio. I see it in Ohio. I see it in North Carolina. I mean, you can't go anywhere and not see the impact. Also for, our military with PTSD and with, there's just so, with our athletes, there's so much opportunity here, but we also have to understand that if anyone has used opioids, and remember, I know we tend to have this whole picture of who those people are, but a lot of times it's like our neighbor, or it's any of us who had back surgery or tooth surgery or something that was debilitating and was recommended an opioid and may still have some of that in our systems. We have to know about that because we could be prolonging that opioid in our system, which could be contributing to some of the addictive components. So we have to be really careful with that one with CBD. Blood thinner. So I think this is a really, I'm going to talk about rerun in a second and a CBD, Lisa, I'll get there. So blood thinners is really interesting because not only could there be that interaction potential, it could increase the amount of the Coumadin or the Jantivin, even the ibuprofen, the impact of the Advil or the Motrin, that blood thinning in your system. And so for anyone who's on Coumadin, we know how important, anyone who works with someone on Coumadin, we know how important it is to make sure that we navigate that successfully. And so as we're navigating that successfully, we don't want to turn around and say, oh, like you need to have a higher amount of this because Coumadin, that your levels are this much higher. We want to understand that it could be the CBD that you're suddenly consuming or using in skincare. I'm going to keep coming back to that. Those creams and those oils, if we're using it, not even as skincare, but just on our body, if we're using it, or a patch if we're using it because we had a back pain and we're not thinking about a blood thinner. But we need to know that. And one of the other reasons we need to know that is because if you have surgery, so it could be simple surgery, right? Or if you're predisposed to a blood thinning issue, we need to know about that part. But if you have dental surgery, if you have eye surgery coming up, if you have a scheduled, totally intentional, getting a little bit of stuff done anywhere on the body surgery, your practitioner needs to know that. And practitioners, you should ask people to stop all CBD, including if it's in a yogurt or an ice cream or wherever else they're going to find it, and make sure that you tell them about, oils or creams or any of that stuff at least 2 weeks before any of those surgeries. So you guys, this one is so important, especially too with kids. We want to make sure on that part, because you could easily have a child who was, had Motrin or Advil, and then they're having surgery, and something mild or whatever, and it just increases. It's just not fair to the surgeon. It's not fair to the team to not have all of that information. This is not fear mongering at all. This is just about having the information. The information means we can all win with better health when we have that information. And then I think, one of the key things for us to think about in terms of the thyroid medication, which I brought up before, is just making sure that we're also spacing things out the way that you're already intended to space things out with your thyroid medication. Okay. So rerun on CBD, as Lisa is asking, she said a friend tried it for their dog and it freaked him out to the point that he trashed their patio furniture and broke out through the screen door. I tried hemp soft chews for mine for fireworks, but it didn't seem to help. Okay. You, Lisa, just summed it up in a nutshell. Dogs, like humans, we have our personalities. We also have very different systems, and there are different dosages of CBD for dogs, and there are also medications that dogs are taking in, etc. So I do not take this lightly. Rerun, thankfully, is the only medications that he's taking is a heartworm medication. I also have him on a probiotic, half of a cup of frozen broccoli. He also gets, you can tell that I'm obsessed with my dog, but he's 12 and a half and doing awesome, knock wood. And so he also gets, he takes a dental, he gets a powder that's good for his teeth. And Rerun also gets, but he does not take now a fish oil. Sometimes he gets his CoQ10. So I found a brand, Bluebird. Actually, it had come in a sample thing. I had emceed an event for Hemp History Week, and I got this sample, and I saw in there, this is for pets. But even before that, my friends at Gaia Herbs, I had their product, and Rerun had an incident. He's like a pro athlete, and he runs all the time. And he had an incident where his he was like almost not putting his leg down. I got very nervous because he's had both knees replaced over the years, and I was just like, oh gosh, I hope we're not seeing arthritis and some of this other stuff. So I started off at a third of the recommended dose, even for his 35 pounds, and I spread it out a couple of times in the day. And within the end of that day, he was doing better. Now, mind you, he might have had a little sprain and he might have just been doing better. But I've kept him on it and he's doing awesome. So I think the key thing is, I feel it could be placebo effect. Rerun could be doing awesome without the CBD, but I feel good having him on it as well. And I think that that is a key thing. We're moving over, Lisa and I are moving over into a lot of the dog conversation. So I just want to make sure we're here to have a CBD conversation. I love talking about dogs, so I am happy to, and it is a Q&A. But I want to make sure that I'm addressing any questions. We've got about 5 minutes left. Any questions that any of you who are watching have about CBD, please ask them, and I'll just continue to answer the questions that come up, including Lisa's about, is Rerun not on a flea and tick preventative? This is an interesting story. So I found something years ago through a vet who dealt with horses. It's called Bug On, and they are wipes and a spray, and it's a blend of herbs, and it works great for fleas and ticks, and I loved using it. But we go to Maine, and Rerun doesn't get it, and he's just in the grass now, which could totally still have fleas and ticks, but he doesn't get into, like, we don't go hiking the way we used to and some of the things like that. But when I do go to Maine, I was really worried about it. And so over the last couple of years, just for a couple of months in the summer, I'll put him on, and instead of for 4 weeks, I put him on it for 6 weeks. And I also get his titers checked for Lyme and some of the other things. So, I'm resistant to put him on a lot of medication, but I'm actually more upset about the fact that the dog park where I go to here with him, I found one park that doesn't, but they spray with Roundup, and I just get pissed every time I go and feed him a little more broccoli, because I know at least the glucoraphanin in broccoli helps the detoxification system remove some of that glyphosate, but I digress. All right. So I'm answering questions about CBD if anybody has any more. Otherwise, we're going to call it a night. I would love it if you have the capabilities, the means to grab our CBD guide, because I really want to encourage these conversations to be happening. Parents to kids, practitioners, teachers, all of these different things, because the more information that's shared, the more we can start to have successful outcomes with CBD, which is what's going to be able to keep us having this beautiful plant available for us across the country and having better recommendations. Yes, so Lisa, and New York is a hotbed. Absolutely. Shonda, your mom has Alzheimer's. I've read it's good for this disease. I'm just not sure what to start her on. She's currently on no meds because she was hallucinating. Shonda, I think this would be an opportunity. What I would recommend is I would not start her on it yourself. I would have a conversation. Thanks. I love seeing my read pop in. Can I just pause for a moment? Thank you. Oh, my little rock star. So Shonda, I want to come back to you. I do not recommend you putting your mom on CBD. I think you could have a conversation with her practitioners, and especially whoever is going to be seeing her on a regular basis, ideally on a daily basis. And if she's currently having hallucinations, I might not, it could be helpful. It could be helpful for digestion, for overall health, etc. I would feel most comfortable with an organic full spectrum, and I would look maybe at about 10 milligrams, depending on her weight and depending on some other pieces, hemp derived and not THC derived. But I would only want for her to be on it if somebody is able to monitor her and is monitoring her on a daily basis and is able to see, one, is she taking it in? So it could be that an oil or something she doesn't have to take orally might even be better. But if she loves, a little coconut flavor, I can recommend, Daily Habit on that part. But you really are going to have to work on it with her practitioner and then whoever the caregiver is, because what you don't want to have happen for her, it's such a destabilizing disease in the sense of the more that there's regularity of experience, the better. That's very protective. And so what we don't want to do is have her get CBD one day and not get CBD another day, or get a high dose one day or something else like that. Lisa, yes, 100%, and I do on a regular basis on Twitter, and I'm not going to ever apologize about it, and on Instagram as well on that part. Shonda, yes, in terms of the dose. So, and I think that's going to be our CBD guide goes through how to work, dosing and just some information on, of course, starting low and going slow. But I would really want to see a qualified practitioner, just make sure that they're part of that conversation. Lisa, I think you mentioned you were updating the guide. Can you let us know when it's updated, it's ready for purchase, and you'll check it out? Yeah. So I can tell you that right now it will be updated and available as of September 2nd. We're doing our next round of updates, but the current guide, and the other option is if you feel like you want the current guide, just then, when you get it today, just say, remind me, and I'll just send you the updated one. I have no problem with sending you both of those. I just want everybody to get this information. So there you have it, my friends. Shonda, great to connect with you. Reed, do you have any words of wisdom that you want to share on CBD and your thoughts about the responsibility that is shared between patients and practitioners? And Reed, great question. What is the responsibility and what are you doing, for example, in a where you're selling, because you have a store where you sell products. So is there a responsibility there to, when somebody's purchasing CBD, share some of this information, or in that way? I'm just curious, just asking questions, because why not? Because I'm here and I have the camera turned on. But if you don't answer me, I'll understand that part too. Okay, I'm about to sign off. Thank you all for the hearts and the thumbs up. For anyone who is watching this at a different point in time, a better point in time for you, awesome. I'm happy and thrilled that you found me. If you like what you saw and you're on YouTube, can you give me a thumbs up? If you like what you saw and learned and you're here on Facebook, and you can give us a like or a follow, we appreciate that part. Most importantly, if you can share this with one person. We have the ability to create a network of really informed patients, purchasers, consumers, retailers, all of these different things, all of these different people, doctors, dietitians. We can create that network together, and that is what is going to allow for safe usage of CBD, for all of its reaping all of its health benefits, of which there are so many. So thank you to everyone. Have an awesome night. I appreciate you, and we'll see you again.